Okay, so a couple minutes ago, I made a follow-up video on splitting and dividing, and then all these other thoughts came. I ended up just deleting that. I'm going to re-record and add in the new stuff. I hate doing videos. I really don't have time for this. So, um, all things demonstrate all things. This is the idea of like a hologram. You can Google it and look into it. Um, so, what ends up happening is in the last days there are these physical manifestations all over the place of what's going on at other levels. So kind of in a spiritual sense, there's a physical representation, there's a spiritual representation. You see things happening in individuals that are also happening in groups of people. You see things happening in the world that are also happening in nations and in neighborhoods, and it's just in all and through all. Okay, so that's a massive key to understanding mysteries like why do springs pop up in the desert, and why do cities become wilderness, and why do the continents join once again, and all these things that are going to happen. It's all part of that. There's a representation of all things in all things. So this splitting and dividing business, uh, you're going to see this in institutions. You're going to see it in churches, in schools, in governments, in states, in cities, in counties. Um, you're also going to see it in ideological groups. You're already seeing it. So there are prominent people from certain worldviews who are dividing and splitting out of those. They're being tossed out or they're willingly leaving. They're being very public about that transition. Things are dividing and things are coalescing. So why is this happening? Rather than go into details about more examples of that, because I'll do that in the books, but it's going to be a while. I'm telling you now because I already know this, and this is the only way I can sort of give you the biggest chunk of this that can be conveyed in such a simple, brief way. And that way you can get the greatest value out of it as early as possible if you have ears to hear. So why does this, what's the mechanism of this? Why is it happening and why does it matter to you? Here's my answer to that. So it's not some weird thing. It is how God works. If you look at creation, go reread the creation account. He admits unarticulated chaos. He processes it through the Spirit. He emits information. He waits for a response. And then he divides. So there's division and there's coalescing. And it's a cycle. It's an iterative process that just keeps going, right? So when that's happening, to the extent that it's happening, it implies that he's involved in the process. When it's not happening, to the extent that it's not happening, it implies that the things involved in the process have distanced themselves from him. And so, in the end, it is as the beginning. If things return into the proximity of influence from God. So I'm wording that very carefully. It's not a question of control because he set up the bounds on the whole thing. But things willingly submit to him once again to a greater extent, and things, and by things I mean all of creation. As they do, you see the properties of his influence more fully, once again, right? Okay, so why does this matter? That's the mechanism. Why does it matter? Look, if continents are splitting and combining, maybe you should be aware that that process is a big enough deal that it should also be happening in you. So what do I mean by this? You should absolutely, positively expect that you are going to encounter new ideas that you've never thought of before. You should expect fully that these ideas are going to rock your world. You should expect fully that everything you consider to be sure and true is going to splinter apart, and from the pieces will coalesce new things that are far better than what you had before. Meaning some things will be preserved and brought in because they can stand in that, and other things will not. So it's like you're some material, and God is going to inculcate into you things that are better than you as you are now. And while he's doing that, he's going to subject you to a process of fire. And so that fire is going to burn out impurities while he's adding in better things. And so some stuff will remain, but a lot of things are going to shift and change. And if you're resistant to that process, all it means is that more of you will be consumed without being replaced by something better. And that can be a complete loss. So to the extent that you admit things that are better into you and seek them and recognize them when they come to you, then you'll gain the benefit of this process of growth and refinement. So there are many things you can look into to expand your understanding of this. Like if you read Jacob 5 and the parable of the olive trees, or look up verses that talk about his arm being revealed, and check out what that word means in Hebrew. And there are many, many examples of this. But maybe the most vivid example that's easiest to understand is the story of the Exodus. And each person's role in that, God, Moses, Aaron, and the people, and look through that in detail and try to apply it to your life. And that's what you should expect, because we're in the last days and that's the way it's going to go.